Hi, friends, and welcome to Tuesday Tea Time with Sahdi and Omni, where we drink the tea and spill the tea about our weekly spiritual practices. I'm Omni.
And I'm Sahdi.
And today's episode is all about ghost stories. And today we have a special guest and fellow ghost hunter, Amanda.
Hello.
So, Amanda, how did you get into ghost hunting?
Well, it's actually a little interesting. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and I grew up in a family that we would sit around the campfire and tell ghost stories.
Same.
So I got exposed to this stuff at a very early age, and I can tell you that it both fascinated me and terrified me. We would camp afterward, obviously, and I would be laying in the tent just terrified, waiting for something to come and eat me or steal me.
Right.
I mean, it was that impactful on me, but would I walk away and not listen to them? Oh, absolutely not. I had to hear everything. So
Yeah.
I grew up in that kind of an environment where we tried to scare each other.
Yeah.
Did your family believe in ghosts as well?
An interesting thing is my aunt and uncle built a house on land that had belonged to my grandfather. So nobody had ever lived in that house before. There were just places in that house I did not like from the get-go. I hated the lower level.
And you're sensitive to energies, right?
I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
I just knew that I didn't like these rooms.
Yeah.
We were all sitting at the kitchen table, and all of a sudden the spigots in the kitchen sink just came on full blast. There was like 5 of us sitting around the table, and we all witnessed it. And my cousin just got up and walked over and shut it off like it was an everyday thing. And I was like, doesn't that scare you? He's like, no, it happens all the time.
I bet the ghost was like, God damn it, that took a lot of energy.
Right.
Guys-
They don't even care.
You're not even impressed.
Yeah.
Right? So that was really the beginnings of my interest in the paranormal. But what really got me into ghost hunting was when my grandfather passed. Luckily, I was older and I was able to go up there and spend time before he passed. And my mom and I were sitting with him, and the nurse came in and she's like, you might want to call your family back up. It's not going to be long now. He ended up passing before everybody got back. So it was just my mom and I in the room with him. And this was my first experience really watching somebody transition. And it was peaceful. I went to bed that night. I slept on the pull-out couch. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, which I didn't know at the time, but I know the significance of it now. I woke up and I had been crying in my sleep. And right before I woke up, I saw him leaning over my bed. He looked young and healthy again. And he just said to me, honey, it's okay. And that's it. And then he was gone. And when I actually woke up and I was crying, I could still feel his presence.
Yeah, I have 8 grandkids. I feel like if I was blindfolded in a dark room, one of my grandkids could walk in and not say a word, and I would know exactly which one it was. They have an imprint. They have.
Yes, there's a presence, there's an essence of that
Exactly.
person. And he was there. Nobody's ever going to convince me that he didn't come to tell me that I don't have to worry because this was my first brush with this.
Right.
And he's just like, well, I'm good. You don't have to be sad.
So, for our listeners, you said you woke up at 3 o'clock and you didn't know the significance of that. What's the significance of that?
So 3 o'clock is known as what they call the dead hour.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an hour where supposedly the veil is the thinnest and you're able to cross over into dreams to communicate or physically step into this plane to
I
communicate.
did not know that.
Between 3 and 4 a.m. is called the dead hour.
I've heard of the witching hour. Well, that's midnight.
That's midnight.
Yeah, like my mom, though, I feel like I swear she's a witch. I really do. Maybe she just doesn't know it because she's really religious. But somewhere in a past life, she had to have been. When we were younger, she used to almost encourage things like that. Like it was okay for us to play with Ouija board. We would do light as a feather,
Stiff as a board.
we would actually levitate each other.
Yep.
And my mom would be right there with us, like smoking weed and being like, yeah, we're like 6 years old. You know what I mean? She encouraged things like that. Like if I would hear something, she'd be like, I wonder if that's a ghost. And she saw the shadow beings and stuff like that too.
Yeah, that's so cool. So we all grew up in houses that kind of catered to keeping our minds open and seeing stuff like this. I'm the type that would go to the ghost house and go in every single room. Like if it was a scary movie, I'd be the first one to die. But I'd take pictures and then I'd go get them developed because I'm old. And, and I would get figures in the pictures and stuff, like actual figures, not just orbs.
You're still good at taking pictures of orbs and stuff. When you took those pictures in New Orleans,
Oh, yeah.
you captured a few things there.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool.
I forgot about that, and I need to post those. Go check out our TikTok. I'm going to post these before this episode even airs, and then y'all can go check it out. The Lala Ree Mansion, and she tortured all of her slaves and was a very evil woman, and we were on a ghost tour, and I took a picture of the mansion from across the street, and something told me to zoom into one of the very many windows, and her face.
Yeah, it was there. And we talked about this on a previous episode.
Yeah, we did. I don't want to put too much time into
Yeah.
it. But I think it's really cool that we all grew up with similar upbringing.
Yeah, it really intrigued me when I was a kid because I wasn't made to feel afraid of it.
Yes.
Because I had my dad that was coming from like the science edge of it. And he was like, well, I'm not seeing anything. So there's nothing here. And you guys are childish. I was a child, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Stop ruining my dreams, Dad.
It wasn't until later on in life when I became really aware of it and found my center.
And then you died. You became a ghost. If you can't beat him, join him.
Right.
And then she came back. Over you, Amanda, what got you into buying equipment and stuff and actually going out there?
Yeah, actual ghost hunting.
As I got older, especially after the death of my grandfather, I got over the fear. I had questions. I'm like, I need to understand what this is. And I started reading up more about it. And my mom came across this Halloween thing that they were having. She's like, oh, look, there's a ghost tour. You should go to this. I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. So I got some work friends to go with me. And the whole time I was out there, my friends were terrified. And I was just like, yeah, this is great, you know? But after that, I was just like, I'm not in it for the cheap thrill. I really do have questions. And the only way to get them answered is to actually go do this stuff. So the first thing I did was I got online and I looked for paranormal groups. None of them really resonated with me until I got to the Charlotte Area Paranormal Society, which we know as CAPS. And they had something called a meetup. So I chose to go to a meetup. The first place we went, it was Ransford Mill. It was a revolutionary battlefield. And I went, I just got to see what they did. I didn't have any equipment. I didn't know anything about it. I just wanted to go and see what would happen. I was like, okay, well, I'll go to the next one too. And she's like, well, we're offering this class. If we'll show you the different equipment and talk about some of our experiences and everything. And if you like it, then we'll invite you to one of our actual investigations.
Oh, okay.
I was like, okay, that's cool. So I went and did the class and I got introduced to the equipment and got shown how to use it. We booked our first big group trip and we went to Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. And the day we went was the day that all those big tornadoes went through Joplin, Missouri.
Oh, so air energy, storm energy.
That storm system actually moved through Louisville that night. And that night, that place was terrifyingly active. We did the tour, and on every floor, there's different entities that are known to haunt certain areas. The fourth floor is the floor where they have an entity known as the Creeper.
I've had some of those at my bar.
I don't know if you know anything about tuberculosis or anything, like the treatments back before there were antibiotics.
No.
One of the treatments that was used to treat tuberculosis was they would remove parts of people's rib cages.
What the fuck?
Once you do that, they can't really stand upright anymore.
Oh my gosh.
And did it ever help with TB?
No. They thought fresh air helps, so they would wheel these sick people out into frigid cold temperatures because they thought sunlight and fresh air would help cure them.
So this place, people were being experimented on, basically.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause they didn't know how to treat
And I'm
it.
sure there wasn't really good anesthesia and stuff like that back then. So people were basically probably being tortured.
Yeah, and then, I mean, the after effects, I mean, you don't recover from your ribs being removed. The fourth floor, like I said, the entity up there was known as the Creeper. And the thing I hate the most in the world is things that creepy crawl on the ground. I have no interest in going to the fourth floor. So we divided up. Where do I get sent first? I get sent to the fourth floor.
Oh, fuck.
It was me and 3 other ladies in the group. And we're walking on the outside walkway, which is where they used to wheel the patient beds out for their fresh air treatment. And we get about halfway down and something dropped from the ceiling, and 2 of the women saw it. They saw the same thing. They described the same thing. They said it dropped down, almost looked like a snake, and it coiled itself, and then it wobbled back and forth, and then it disappeared.
Fuck that.
And they both saw it.
I'm like, I'm not scared. And then you talk about ghost snakes. What the fuck? I'm like, no, thank you.
Well, when she's like, it looked like a snake, and I'm like, a snake? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not worried about a ghost snake. I'm just worried about a snake.
Yeah.
You know, I
Oh
don't
my
want that.
But it disappeared.
But
so it was a
disappeared,
ghost
right.
snake.
Yeah. So that happened, and we got our wits about us. It wasn't 5 minutes later, then the third lady, she's walking at the back of the pack, and all of a sudden she screams. We all turn around, we're like, what? She's like, I just saw a huge black mass over my shoulder. If you knew these women, they don't rattle easy. We're getting freaked out. I firmly believe that whatever was there started to feed on that fear. We're outside. We have to walk through those patient rooms to get to a staircase. But do we want to walk back inside where this thing supposedly lives, you know? We're like, we got to get help. We got to go. And I was like, we just got to pick a room and walk through it. We got to go. So we start to walk through one of the rooms. And just as we get to the room, all of our equipment starts going on.
Oh, God.
And we're all back to back in a circle with looking out. All our backs are together. We're like panicking. One of them was like, we need help. And I'm like, get on the radio and call somebody and have them come and meet us in the hallway. And everybody dropped everything and came.
Oh, like
But-
what's going on in the fourth
Right,
floor?
Right. Ghost snakes. Ghost snakes.
But just as we started walking through, it's like it knew that it was going to lose its grip on us if we got to the hallway. We're walking through the patient room, and as we get into the hallway, people showed up from the other floors. And as soon as other people got onto the floor, everything stopped. So I firmly believe whatever was there was feeding on our fear. There's no electricity in that building, or at least there wasn't when we went. So it's not like it was giving false positives on any electrical wiring or anything like that. Something had to set that off. They were like, hey, we need to go collect cameras on the fourth floor. I'm like, I'm not going.
Yeah, gonna have
Right.
fun.
But we went back a few years later. Nothing the entire night. It
Really?
was just dead.
Pun intended.
Yes.
It's really interesting to hear your stories about ghost hunting. I'm not sure why, but I've always rejected ghost hunting for some reason. And I think it's because, you watch shows and the ghost hunters are on there.
Yeah, the show.
And it's like they're yelling at the ghost and I rebuke you. And they're
Right,
doing all this like
provoking.
crazy shit because it's on TV or whatever. And so I was always like, I'm not going to hunt a ghost. I have enough ghosts that come to me. All right, they hunt me. I don't hunt them.
I don't chase, I
I'm-
attract.
I mean, when I was younger, we had an old graveyard behind our apartment complex, and they didn't pull up all the graves. They said they were going to before they built it, but you could still see some headstones out in the woods every once in a while.
Was this here in
It was
Oregon?
in Florida.
Oh, this is in Florida. Okay.
I think the whole ghost hunting died inside of me when a friend of ours was driving a truck and he hit something. And I was like, oh, you hit Fred. And everybody starts laughing because we were smoking weed and drinking, like 14, 15 years
Yeah.
old. And we get out of the car and he couldn't get his truck unstuck. And so I walked around to the front and my friend screamed. And I was like, what? She's like, how did you know his name? And I was like, what? She's like, the grave we just hit. And I
wow.
said his name and just randomly, and that's what the headstone said. So after that, I was like, I don't like graveyards. I'm scared. This is so scary for us. Just ran and left the truck
Yeah.
like a half a mile to get back.
You didn't know you were an actual medium.
I had no idea, but it
Yeah.
scared me. They teased me about that for years. But then I'm going to jump to about 20 years ago. My kids were young, and there was a little place called Whispering Woods in Aloha, Oregon, if anybody else wants to check it out. And it's just in the middle of a neighborhood. You park on the street, you go down a hill, there's a picnic bench there, and then there's some wooded area. And the kids used to like to play back there.
Mm-hmm.
They would always come back and say that weird stuff happened there. And my oldest son, he was probably like 12 or 13 at the time, he said that he saw a little girl and he saw her clear as day. And there's a place that's a natural arch. It's vines that go over. They would always say, we love going in and out of it because when we go in, we feel this weird feeling in our body.
Oh.
And then he was saying that he saw the ghost girl right after they would go through, they called it the portal.
Probably was.
Yeah, but I had never been that deep into the woods before. I would always just walk them down, sit at the bench, and let them go play. I didn't really know what they were talking about. There actually was a story about a little girl who was 12. She was raped and killed about 30 years before that, and they found her in those woods.
Oh.
And I confirmed this by research. I was like, well, that's kind of weird. That's why I started looking for a ghost hunter. And so I met some people that were ghost hunters, and they did it professionally, and they had all the equipment like you do. And they were very serious about what they did. We went down there about 3:00 in the morning, just like you said.
Oh, the dead hour.
And they instructed me, don't whisper. If you're going to say anything, say it loud and clear. If you accidentally whisper, say something, say, oh, I just whispered. Because when you're putting the sound back, you don't want to waste your time spending on somebody that said, oh my God.
Yeah, and that's very common.
So I was prepared when I went out there, and I wasn't afraid because I was with them. And as we were walking down, I had never really noticed before that I was walking downhill, and I almost felt like I was walking uphill. It felt like something was pushing me backwards, like to leave. They were like, yep, we feel it too. There's presence out here. So as we're walking through, it takes about 5 minutes to get to where the little girl was. They were recording the entire time, and I couldn't hear anything while we're going. But when we got home, there was so many voices talking to us in that place. And so we go down, we go through the arch, and I did feel a tingling, a very powerful feeling, almost like I was walking into another realm when I went through it. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm just maybe scared, or I'm anticipating this. We put the device on a tree branch. And the guy was like, hey, little girl, we're here to talk to you. This is what you talk into if you want to communicate anything with us. And then we'd get real quiet. And then I felt this cold energy just blow past me. It felt like the coldest burst of wind. And it was the middle of summer. So I just was like, I'm just going to be quiet and let him do his thing, right? He's the professional. And he was like, all right, if you're not going to talk to us, we're going to go. And we got real quiet again, right? As we're leaving, it felt like something was pushing me. I was going uphill to leave, and it felt like I was going faster because it felt like there was energy that physically pushing me up the hill to get the fuck out of there. We got home, and he hooked it up to the computer, and we were listening to it. And so as we're going through, because he was asking questions as we were walking through, and he's like, what's your name? And we heard a guy say, Scott, really crystal clear. And then we were picking up on people saying, hello, hello, and just like weird shit.
You're like, we did not hear that.
It was just the three of us out there, 3
yeah.
o'clock in the morning in the middle of this little tiny Whispering Woods place. We get to the part of the recording where he's playing it back. You can hear dead silence. And then you can hear, it sounds like a little girl giggling. And then he's like, all right, little girl, if you're not going to talk to us, we're going to go. And she was like, 1, 2, 3, go. And I heard that shit, and I was freaking out. There's no way. And it was so clear. He was like, do you want a copy of it? I'm like, fuck no. And I never let my kids go back down there again.
Yeah.
Something I found out about those ghost hunting shows is they don't just go for one night the way they make you think that they do. They are often recording over a whole week.
Yeah, and they're trying to get people to watch too, so they're instigating.
And they're dramatic.
It's got to be dramatic, but I'm sure they do sometimes get stuff. But it's not a single night the way they make it seem. They are recording night after night after night, hoping to get something. I had to learn this lesson the hard way. It was about 8 or 9 years ago now. My friend Christine had moved from Charlotte to Las Vegas. So I'd go out to visit. Her and I would go pal around, and we'd pick paranormal places all around Vegas to go to. This time we went to a place called Pioche, and it was featured on one of the ghost shows. And we stayed in the haunted room. It was an adjoining room. It had 2 bedrooms in it. We did something that we had never done before. We took a Ouija board. And we knew better, but we did it anyway. So we used it, and that night we went into our separate rooms. Neither of us slept well. I had nightmares the whole night. I was dreaming that somebody was coming in and out of the room and into the bathroom, because my room had the bathroom in it. I just kept dreaming that somebody was in and out of the room, going in and out of the bathroom. Just also bad dreams all night.
What did you get on the Ouija board? Were you connecting with somebody and talking to somebody?
Not really.
She's like, no, I was just opening a portal.
Yeah.
Duh.
Oh, you opened it, but
Yeah, apparently we did. So yeah, when we talked about it the next day, I was like, yeah, I didn't sleep well. She's like, yeah, I didn't either. We didn't think anything more of it. We went back to Vegas. I flew home. And for the next 2 weeks,
ooh, it attached.
Yes, I got an attachment. Stuff started happening to me that I could not explain. My whole personality changed. I am very good at keeping appointments. I'm very organized. I'm punctual. I missed like 3 appointments during that 2 weeks. I failed to close my garage door one night, left it wide open, and the door from my garage into my house doesn't lock. I left it wide open. I never do that. I left my keys in the front door one night, and I never do that.
Absent-mindedness is one of the very first signs of possession.
I noticed my temperament changed. If I go into a Walmart on a Saturday, I know I'm going to wait in line. I go in with patience. Anywhere I went into, I was impatient. I was rude to people, which I do not do.
So you were just completely out of character.
Just completely out of character. And I was noticing it. I was out for a walk one day, and as I was walking, I started experiencing chest pains. And I just had this moment of panic. And I'm like, oh my God, I am having a heart attack. But then this thought hit me. I'm like, this is not your pain. This is not happening to you. You're feeling someone else's pain.
Oh, I've been there, but it wasn't a ghost.
So I immediately took out my phone and I messaged my friend Susan, who is a sensitive, and she's also a witch. I was like, Susan, what is happening to me? She's like, you have an attachment. I'm calling Tina now. We're going to take care of this. She's like, you didn't bubble yourself, did you? So, no. She's like, what did you do? I described it to her. And she's like, let me call Christine because I have a feeling she's got one too. And my friend Christine is not an emotional person. I had known her for years. Never saw her cry. Never saw her really emote in any way.
Yeah.
And she called me just when all this stuff was starting to happen to me, sobbing. And she's like, I don't understand what's wrong with me. Nothing is going right for me. And I just am so miserable. And when Susan's like, yeah, I think Christine's got one too. My attachment was a little old man. He had heart problems, and he was just a mean old man, very forgetful. I didn't tell her anything that I had been experiencing, and she came back with me and told me everything that I had been going through. And then she's like, Christine has one too. And I'm like, okay, who is it? Well, I'm pretty sure she was a Las Vegas madam. And I was like, oh my God. So she came, she did everything, and she took me outside and did the ritual. I felt a huge weight come off of me. It was like suddenly I'm myself again, and it was so fast.
And as you were talking, my wheels were spinning in my brain. Before I had my near-death experience, I closed myself off to a lot of things like that. My oldest son, he's over 30 now. So this is a really long time ago. Me and his dad met at a hotel, and it was like pouring down rain. He was only like 5 months old at the time.
I remember.
We were laying on one bed, and we had the baby on the other bed. We fell asleep watching TV, and then my ex-boyfriend had a knife in his pocket. He always carried a knife in his pocket. So we went to bed, turned off the TV. It was pitch black in there. If you've ever been in a hotel, those windows, those privacy curtains, right? It makes it really black in there. We'd just fallen asleep, and we heard somebody angrily. Remember earlier how you were talking about you can just sense somebody being there? It felt like a man, and it felt like he was pissed off. And he threw a quarter down on the dresser. We could hear it loud and clear. It didn't sound like a dime. It didn't sound like a penny. It sounded like a quarter. And then he went into the bathroom, and we could hear the shower curtain close. I was like, baby, like I was whispering to my boyfriend, and he's like, shut the fuck up. He was scared, and he's got his hands down because we can't see, and he's feeling for his knife in his jeans. And he pulls his jeans up on the bed. He's like, where's my fucking knife? And his whole body was just shaking. And he was like, get the baby. So he jumps up and he runs into the bathroom, turns on the light, and I jump over to the other bed and grab the baby. And he was like, where the fuck did you go? And he's looking everywhere. There's nobody there. And I'm starting to really panic, and I'm holding the baby. Now he's crying because I just woke him up and scared him. I was like, there's nobody in there. Look and see, he just dropped a quarter because we didn't have any change or anything up on top of the dresser. And I'm like, tell me there's not a quarter up there. And he looked and he's like, let's get the fuck out of here right now because there was a quarter sitting there. Nothing else. Pouring down rain, we left all of our shit in there and just ran to the lobby. And I was freaking out. I'm like, man, somebody fucking ran through the room. We're trying to tell him we're like out of breath, half dressed. The guy starts laughing and he's like, yeah, he's around here sometimes. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like,
a homeless man? What the fuck?
This is a long time ago. This is 30 plus years ago. There was payphones back then. So what happened was there was a guy that was in that room that was an addict. I guess the last thing he did was somebody saw him trying to get a hold of somebody. He kept putting a quarter in, it would fall out, and he'd slam the phone down, get his quarter back. And he kept doing that over and over again. And then he went back into the room and OD'd.
Oh, shit.
Wow.
And so he must have come in through the room, threw the quarter down because it wasn't working. And then he did more drugs and died.
Wow.
I'm stuck in a loop now.
The guy was looking at us, well, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, well, I need somebody to go in there and grab our stuff because I'm not going back in there.
Yeah. You did not disclose that there's a ghost that comes with this room.
And then he was looking at me like, we're not doing that. It was just him. I guess he didn't want to work or... I'm like, well, I'm not going back in there and I need my stuff and you need to give me a different room. Like, do your job.
Right.
But it was so scary.
Yeah, I bet. I would
And
be
so
scared
that's
too.
like fragmented. But then that got me thinking that it wasn't soon after that my son's dad started acting crazy. Now looking back on it, because I wasn't aware then.
Yeah.
And he ended up being an addict and going to prison and all kinds of stuff.
Shit.
I wonder if he's still got an attachment. I wonder if there's any possible way.
That's wild.
I never even thought about that before. But when you were talking, it was like clicking in my brain. I mean, maybe he was just going to be like that anyway, but...
That's why they tell you that if you're not feeling physically well or you're going through some stuff, we don't recommend you go do any kind of paranormal investigation
Right.
because you are susceptible to being taken over.
Yes.
I think I was haunted, actually. I was talking about this with a friend. We talked about him briefly, the blue boy. I'd have night terrors when I was younger. And I feel like he was a malevolent spirit that was maybe attached to me or attached to the house I lived in. Because as soon as I moved from Arizona to Illinois, he disappeared from my dreams. I used to fly above my neighborhood and he would chase me in my dreams. I remember I was talking to my friend that I grew up with and I was telling her about this entity that would haunt me, scare the shit out of me. And he had this creepy smile. And she goes, well, you're the captain of your own ship. She's such a smart little girl. She's a teacher now. You can just say, hey, this is my dream. It's your dream. Say, give me a knife. And then just stab him. And I was like, that's a good idea. I'll try that. So literally that night, and have you ever seen the movie Poltergeist?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So
That's where my fear of clouds comes from.
dude, mirrors for me. We had these big sliding mirrors in the hallway. And I'm walking by them. I was dreaming. And I see him in the mirror. And I was like, what the fuck? And he grabs me and pulls me in the mirror.
Ooh.
And when we're inside the mirror, it looked a lot like, you know, when you see a bubble and you see a mirage on top of the bubble, the light. That's what it looked like in there. And I was like, no, you can't do this to me. This is my dream and I control it, and give me a knife. And he just starts laughing, this maniacal laugh and this scary grin. And then my hand where I asked for the knife turned into a blister and it hurt physically in my dream. I woke up and I was biting my hand.
Wow.
But I never saw him in waking life. He haunted my dreams. It got so bad to where my mom took me to a doctor. And I had to set an alarm for 4 hours after I go to sleep, which would be around the dead hour. And I would wake up and write down my dream. And that trains your brain to forget your dreams.
Really?
I had that notebook for a long time and it's scary.
Oh, wow.
I definitely think he was a spirit that haunted me. He must have been attached to the house. But yeah, in waking life, I've seen a spirit at one of the places I work. I work at a brunch place, and whenever I open, the lead cook is already there. He's very clear that when you come in, you have to say hi to him or you freak him out, because he's deathly scared of this ghost. Because every time he opens, this ghost mess with him. They will open cabinets, they'll knock stuff over, and he's terrified of it, right? And he's a hard ass. And I was sweeping the back of the restaurant, and it was one of the only times there was just nobody in there. It was just me. I'd sent everybody else home and just two cooks in the kitchen. And I'm in the back of the restaurant sweeping, and I see the ghost. And it's a little girl in a blue dress skipping. This whole time, the cook thought it was the previous owner that had passed away.
Okay.
And I'm like, no, it's a little girl, and she's playing with you. She only comes around him and moves things in the morning when he's the only one there. And this day, this is the only time I've ever seen her. I was in the back of the restaurant by myself. No tables, no nothing was there. I told him, I said, hey, it's not an old man. It's a little girl. He was yelling at me one day, and I said, hey, you better be nice to me. I'm going to stick that ghost on you. And his face dropped, and he goes, that's not funny. He was so serious. It was wild. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
That's all the tea we have to spill for today. As always, remember to keep your minds open.
Namaste, bitches.